Almost 80 years ago, in the aftermath of World War II, states of the world realized they needed an agreement and an approach to make responses to displacement more reliable, more effective, more rights-based. They established the global refugee regime. The anchor of that regime was the 1951 Convention relating to the status of refugees. That turns 75 this year. But it didn't stop there. It grew with the OAU Convention of 1969, with the 1984 Cartagena Declaration, and over time, driven by actors in the Global South, the scope of the regime has grown to respond to the needs of displacement. At a time when so many are critiquing this regime, when so many are calling for the undoing of these core agreements that have stood the test of time, the declaration calls not for rejection, but for renewal, to build on this legacy of evolution and to make a clear statement on the role of protection principles in the world today.
One of the key messages of the Declaration is that knowledge developed in the Global South should be implemented, because the problem is the Global South problem. See, none of the refugee conventions, statelessness conventions, or the global compacts really brought out voices from the Global South. So, of course, as scholars of the Global South, activists of the Global South, we challenge the knowledge that is given to us, that is represented as the authentic knowledge. So we say that we are bringing in so many voices from so many hotspots, or we are speaking from the belly of the beast.
We created this declaration on the eve of the 75th anniversary of the Geneva Convention. And it's really an historic moment because we're at a stage where the very states that helped to create this declaration, many of them are now in the process of wanting to dismantle it. And it's more important than ever that we really emphasize the core principles and norms of the Geneva Convention. And many of these protocols and conventions and declarations were really driven after 1967 by the global South. We as research chairs in Global South are coming together to really stick a stake in the ground and say these are the norms of protection.
The declaration itself insists that the global solidarity is important and it must remain in the international community. We cannot leave the burdens or obligation to the local or national levels alone.
The declaration has three core messages from a group of researchers in contexts from Peru to Thailand across the Global South, from those contexts most affected by displacement. The first message is that the principles that we have matter, that those principles lay the foundation for what we need to do in the future. Number two, there's a core message that it is possible to renew our commitments and address the needs that have emerged in the past 75 years. We can build from what we have, and we can respond to the phenomenon today. But number three is the message that this cannot happen on its own. It needs collective action from a wide group of actors beyond the refugee regime, including researchers, refugees, refugee-led organizations, displaced communities, civil society, and actors in every corner, in every space of those issues that affect those who've experienced displacement. It's a collective action whose time is now.
I believe there are three things we need. We need to recognize those, we need to resource, and we need to act the knowledge that we are gathering from the ground.
As we prepare to mark the 75th anniversary of the Refugee Convention, I look forward to the contributions that will emerge from your discussions and to how the work of the IDRC research chairs can help advance these objectives of more reliable protection and more timely solutions.
This voice is not just a simple academic voice. It is an academic voice that is informed by the very affected people.
Il faut que les autorités nous accompagnent, surtout les différents partenaires. Il faut une gouvernance mixte et inclusive. Il faut un financement structurant il faut une priorité au développement structurel et surtout le nexus et action humanitaire, développement et paix.
This declaration is critical. I mean, I work in the MENA region, where the majority of the countries are not signatories to the 1951 Refugee Convention. And I feel that we actually need to work towards adopting the convention and engaging with it rather than letting go of it at this point in time. It would be catastrophic for the region to not have refugee protections, given all the conflicts, all the displacement that is going on in the region, and the prospect of actually not being able to integrate or protect these refugees.
Donc, c'est une déclaration informée par la pratique et qui cherche à orienter la pratique. Elle constitue un socle commun, fondamental, un pilier d'action qui ouvre le chemin à des perspectives très, très intéressantes de transformation sociale ancrées dans la réalité des terrains.
Declaration is an important statement by the collective of chairs to reinstate the principles of maintaining and reinforcing the current regime protection. And it's important because it's coming from a collective from the Global South that not only is the recipient of the highest number of displaced people, but also has many examples where real policy influence is happening through regional mechanisms and through locally led initiatives.
Levantar nuestras voces en relación a la necesidad de fortalecer el sistema de protección, el de avanzar en lo que es una política y una práctica y un mecanismo común de articulación, y el de sensibilizar a las sociedades y a las estructuras del Estado, de los gobiernos, de las instituciones de derechos humanos, en la necesidad de seguir fortaleciendo el trabajo de la migración, del desplazamiento y de considerar el cambio climático como un elemento que crea nuevas situaciones y dificultades.
Es muy importante que se escuche a las universidades y a otros actores para plantear distintos tópicos y asuntos que son fundamentales, que sean atendidos por distintos actores, entre ellos los gobiernos de la región.
A few donors now contributing to humanitarian support, so there is cutting support, which jeopardize the protection.
Policies must always be based on norms and on evidence. This declaration offers that combination. It is based on empirical research, on knowledge about the context, but it also offers a plan of action that is concrete, that is practical, that is feasible.
At a moment when so many actors are calling for an undoing of this regime that has been with us for 75 years, what gives me hope is how many examples there are of positive change on which we can draw. From Colombia, Brazil, Kenya, Ethiopia, Thailand, we see in context after context, there is a desire for change. There's a desire for positive responses to address the needs of those who have been displaced and the needs of host communities. What gives me hope, if we can bring these examples together, we can build momentum to meet the challenge of today and build a regime that will work into the future.
What do we have to be hopeful for? I think we have humanity to be hopeful for. And sometimes we can look at humanity and feel down, and we can see our history. But at the same time, if you look at history in the correct way, we see that the 1951 Geneva Convention, the 75 years, it came out of a horrific period of failures of protection that came out of World War II. But what happened? Humanity prevailed. And I truly believe that humanity will prevail again when it comes to protecting people who are the most vulnerable.